you all and the chat at the same time. All right, Ethan, I'm going to put you on mute there. Thank you, buddy. All right, so we're going to press add response and we're going to do this together. Here we go. What are stories made of? So last week we were talking about literal and non-literal language, right? We were talking about how the author sometimes says things that don't mean exactly what it says, like how the leaves were dressed in red and gold. They didn't actually put on a dress. It was just talking about how they changed colors, right? And so that's part of stories. That's part of what makes a story. We are also going to look at today different parts of a story like chapters. Things like chapters and introductions and conclusions, problems, solutions, all of these things that help create a good story. Yes, the lost dog. So it should be what are stories made of? And then keeping the lost dog lost. This is also part of our work today. So we're going to start here on page 1. And this is recording, not so that you can, kind of check out now and not do anything and copy it off YouTube later. The purpose of the YouTube videos is so that if when we're done today, you're like, oh man, I missed the last page, you can go back and rewatch it. And also for our kiddos that were not able to log on today so that they can log on and see it as well. Okay. So I don't want you guys going, oh, I'll do it on YouTube later, because then you're just sitting here for an hour and a half. I want you to do it with me and then use the YouTube video as a tool later if you need it. Does that make sense? Perfect. It only says keeping the lost dog. Sophia, let me check on my Seesaw real quick, because you're in Miss Alvarez's class, right? Or is it Miss McCullough?
It kicked me out, but I logged back in.
Thanks, Louise. Sophia. Oops. Whose class are you in? Can you let me know? Looks like Miss Alvarez's class has it. Activities. Oh, looks like Miss McCullough accidentally assigned the wrong one. No worries. I can fix that. Let me go to...
It only has the lost dog on mine.
Yes, I'm going to fix that right now. This is why it's a good thing I've got Miss McCullough's Seesaw on mine. I help a lot. So I know she's really busy with the in-person kiddos and mistakes happen. I make mistakes all the time. I'm really good at it. Here we go. Assign. Homeroom. I'm just going to assign it to everybody so y'all got it. Okay. I just assigned it to Miss McCullough's class. So if you were in Miss McCullough's class, refresh your page. You can do that by pressing this address bar till it turns blue and then press enter. Or you can click your journal and then click back to your activities, and it'll do that as well. So while you're getting that, I'm going to read to you guys the introduction, okay? What are stories made of? Our learning target this week. Knowing how parts of a story are organized can help you better understand how events and ideas connect and build on each other. So just like how if you guys have ever read a chapter book, or I know Miss Alvarez's class, y'all read Poppy. In my class, we read The War with Grandpa. I think in Miss McCullough's class, you guys read Poppy as well. And so every chapter builds on the one before, right? Like something happens, and then the next chapter, something else happens that builds on that event. For example, in Poppy, when Poppy and Ragweed get caught in the forest and Ragweed dies, the event builds in the next chapter when Poppy has to escape the forest and find her way home. And then she finds her way home, and then in the next chapter. And so it builds on each other. Devaney, go ahead.
We, Mrs. Alvarez's class, which I am in, we also read Charlotte's Web.
Yes, I remember. Yep. You guys read Charlotte's Web as well. I don't know Charlotte's Web as well. I have read it, but it's been a while. But it's the same thing, right? The chapters build on each other. So the different events are all organized in chapters for a reason. So all stories have a beginning, a middle, and an end. To make longer stories easier to read, authors often divide them into parts or sections. These sections are called chapters. Every chapter adds new events and information to the story. So we're going to read this table of contents. The table of contents you can sometimes find at the beginning of a chapter book. So like here, I have Martin Luther King Jr. with me, which some of you guys may be reading in class. And at the beginning, you can see the table of contents, right? It tells you every chapter and the title of the chapter. This is so that you'll know, okay, I know that there's going to be 8 chapters in this book. And it looks like every chapter is probably about 5 pages or so because it tells you the page number. That's the table of contents. So this table of contents shows the chapter summaries from what they found on Planet Z. Chapter 1, a great discovery. Scientists learned there are living creatures on the newly discovered Planet Z. Chapter 2, meeting the aliens. The scientists travel to Planet Z, but cannot figure out how to talk to the aliens. Chapter 3, mind talk. The scientists and the aliens from Planet Z learn that they can understand each other when their heads touch. Isn't that crazy? So thinking about these chapters, do you guys think this is fiction or nonfiction? You can come off of mute and tell me or type it in the chat.
Nonfiction.
Remember, nonfiction means real. Fiction means fake.
Fiction.
It's fiction. Yes, remember.
Fiction.
Nonfiction means it's real. It is a real story. The story of Martin Luther King Jr. is nonfiction. It is a true story. However, this story sounds like fiction because we haven't found another planet with aliens on it, right? So it's fiction. It's pretend. So we're going to look again at these summaries. How do these chapters build on each other? So in chapter 1, we can see that scientists learn there are living creatures. And then they travel there, but they can't figure out how to talk. And then finally, they learn how they can understand each other. Now, chapter 3 would not make sense without chapters 1 and 2, would it? Because if we just start chapter 3 of, oh, we can understand each other when our heads touch, we'd be like, wait a minute. Who can understand who? Why do your heads have to touch? What is even happening, right? You have to read them in order because they each build on each other. Each chapter gives you new information from the rest of the book. So it's super important that the author splits up these books into chapters. That way we can see in chapter 1, we usually learn the characters and the setting, and sometimes it introduces us to like a problem or a big event. Our big event here is that they discover these living creatures. And then in chapter 2, it gives us a little bit more action, a little bit more problems. Well, now they have a problem. They're problems, they can't communicate with each other. And then finally, the solution to the problem. It's usually towards the end of the story. They find a solution. It's a happily ever after. They learn how to talk to each other. So all of these events are super important because they build on each other. So when we go to page 2, go ahead and click it with me. It wants us to finish these charts so that we can see how these chapters build on each other. Now, if you are writing in a notebook, what I would recommend is writing something like, and it takes me a minute to find my notebooks. You know why? Because my kids steal my stuff, you guys. They steal my notebooks. I have to hide these because otherwise they're gone. So if you are writing these in a notebook, by the end of today, before we go to our break, you will be able to show me your notebook like this, and it will have all of your work on it. Or I will be able to see it on GoGuardian and see that you press the green check mark to turn it in. Now, if you're doing on a notebook, what I would do is I would write C1. And then give yourself like 2 lines because it does it for you, right? So C1, you can just write done because they already did it for you on Seesaw. And then you can skip a line or 2 and write C2 for chapter 2, which is right here, meeting the aliens. Now, anything I type on here, you're going to write next to C2, next to chapter 2. And then same for chapter 3. After you finish writing that, you're going to write C3 and then write whatever I type for chapter 3. If you prefer to do work digitally, like on Seesaw, you've gotten real good at Seesaw and you like it, that is perfect because at the end of today, you're going to press that green check mark and be donezo with it. Okay. Otherwise, before you press the green check mark, if you're like, oh, I wrote it in my notebook, you'll have to show me your notebook before we go to our break. Okay. That's the deal for today. Either needs to be turned in on Seesaw or show me a notebook. All right. So it tells us in chapter 1 what we just talked about, right? It tells us that scientists discover there's life on planet Z. That's so exciting. That begins our story, begins our characters. Chapter 2, meeting the aliens. What did we find out in chapter 2? Eden, what did we find out?
That they don't know how to talk each other's language.
Yeah, they don't know how to communicate, right? That's exactly right. So whoops, I'm still in all caps, I'm sorry. And I'm going to switch this up a little bit. The scientists and aliens cannot figure out how to communicate with each other. It's a big problem, right? If our 2 characters in our book can't communicate. I'm going to change this to purple. I feel like it's a little bit easier to see when it's not just black and white. And I'm going to give you guys a minute to either write this down or type it. So if I'm writing, I'm going to look at my notebook and I'm going to write on the lines clearly so that I can read it. So it should look something like this.
A bicho me pegou! ¡No me está ganando el pelo! Hey!
If you just joined us, please type your name in the chat so I can get you for attendance. Thank you.
Do we type something in the chat when we're done?
No, you can go ahead and just type. I'm going to give you all about another minute to finish writing this, and then we're going to look at chapter 3. All right, so now chapter 3, mind talk. So our chapter 2 is our problem, right? They can't communicate. But then in chapter 3, they find a solution. What was the solution? Who remembers the solution? Evan, go ahead.
They put their heads together.
Yes, they put their heads together and they can communicate. Very good. So they figure out that if they touch their heads together, they can communicate. That's a great solution, right? Because then they can communicate with each other. They can talk.
I need to come back really quick.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Miss, I came late.
Hey, Lupita, I'm glad you're here. Make sure you get this either typed on Seesaw or written down, okay?
And what time can I come again to read a story with you?
We haven't read the story yet. We just got started.
Okay. What time are you gonna do this again?
At 11, but this is your time to log on, so I need you to stay on right now too, okay?
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to type these in the chat as well. If you're still writing it. 3, 2, 1. There is chapter 2 in the chat. 3, 2, 1. There's chapter 3 in the chat. So if you're still typing it or writing it, it is in the chat. So unless you have a question, please don't type in the chat so that way it doesn't get buried in there. Thumbs up if you can see it in the chat. Excellent. Good job, guys. Okay, so I'm going to go to page 3. If you're still typing, go ahead and type it from the chat, or if you're still writing in your notebook, and then just listen along with me for our story today. This is Keeping the Lost Dog Lost. You're going to finish this story in class on Thursday with your teacher. So we're going to finish this assignment today, but our next ready reading assignment is Keeping the Lost Dog Lost Part 2. So it's the ending of the story. So today we only get to read the first half of it. This is by Siri Johnson, and this is a fictional story, meaning it is made up. It is not a real story. Chapter 1, Finding a Lost Dog. 3 weeks ago, I found a lost dog on my way home from school. Mom and I couldn't figure out to whom he belonged to, so we called him Mystery. There was no mystery, though, about what happens next. I fell in love with this dog and started hoping that he could stay with us forever. Then one night, Mom sat down next to me and said, Jillian, what if we can't find Mystery's owner? Do you think you're ready to become a pet owner? I said, yes, of course. But then a darker thought crept into my brain. What if we did find his owner? Chapter 2, Mystery's real name. The next day, I was taking Mystery for a walk when I spotted, tacked to a telephone pole, a poster with a picture of a lost dog on it. I thought, oh no, it can't be. But there was no question. It was Mystery, or should I say Barney, because it seemed that that was his real name. Are you Barney? I asked, and he barked 3 times, wagging his tail happily. Then we walked all over the neighborhood, and I tore down 10 more posters from 10 more poles. I knew that what I was doing was selfish and wrong, but I couldn't bear to lose Barney. So these are the first 2 chapters. These are the only 2 chapters we get to read today. So her and her mom are coming home from school and she finds this dog. She can't find his owner. Luis, make sure you're paying attention. You're in school right now. Thank you. So she's walking home from school, this girl, Jillian, and she finds this dog and she's like, oh, I can't find his home. We'll take him home and keep him for a while until we find his owner, right? They're going to take care of him so he doesn't get hurt or lost anymore. And then her mom says, well, if we can't find his owner, do you think you're ready to be a pet owner? Do you think you're ready to take care of a pet? And she's so excited. She wants to keep this dog more than anything, right? So when she sees that there's a poster for a lost dog, so someone's looking for him, right? Someone's looking for him because they're his owners, because he's their pet. And she doesn't want to give him up. So she walks around the neighborhood with him and tears down the posters so that nobody will see that he's missing. So that way she can keep him. And she says, I knew it was selfish and wrong, but she couldn't bear the thought of losing him because she loved him so much already. So this is the first half of the story. Thursday in building, or if you're still online on Thursday, then you're going to finish the story and you're going to figure out the solution. So our characters are Jillian and her mom and the dog. The problem is that Jillian wants to keep this lost dog, but she discovers that someone's actually looking for him, that someone lost him. He has an owner, but she doesn't want to give him back. So it says underline phrases and sentences that tell important events. Then think about how each event builds on the one that came before it. So I'm going to use my highlighter tool. Go ahead and click your highlighter tool. And we're going to look at our important events. So 3 weeks ago, she finds a lost dog on her way home from school. That's the first big event, right? The rest of the story would not have happened if she didn't find this lost dog. And then our next big event that happens is mom says, if we can't find Mystery's owner, do you think you're ready to become a pet owner? So mom is thinking, if we can't find him, because it's been 3 weeks, it says. 3 weeks is a pretty long time for a pet to be missing. So she says, well, if we can't find his owner, are you ready to keep him and to be responsible and take care of him? And Jillian says, yes, of course, yes. But then she saw on the telephone pole the poster of a lost dog, and it was Mystery's poster. And finally, she tore down a bunch of posters from the telephone poles so that people wouldn't think he was missing. Those are our 4 important events. Here, I'll zoom out so you can see all 4 of them and highlight them. If you're on paper, don't worry about writing these down because we're going to do that on our chart in the next page. Okay, going to page 4 and 5.
Miss Mannering,
Yes.
I can't see the highlights.
The yellow?
Yeah, I can't see where it is. I can't see the letters to make sure which one it is.
Okay, that's fine. Just do the best you can because we're going to put these important events on page 4 anyways. This is just to kind of show us where we got our. So on page 4, this is where we're going to write the important events from chapters 1 and chapters 2. So it says that finish the chart with details from the story that help you understand Jillian's problem. The beginning of the story usually introduces the main characters and a problem. The next chapters build on that problem, which we can kind of see happens in this book. So chapter 1, I'm going to look at what I highlighted for my important events. 3 weeks ago, they find a lost dog, right? Then mom says, if we can't find Mystery's owner, are you ready to become a pet owner? Are you ready to keep him? Those are the important events from chapter 1. So on the next page, and if you are doing this in a notebook, I would draw a line so that you know that this is a new page. And then same thing as we did before, in the margin, you can write C1 for chapter 1 and write whatever I'm going to type. Okay. So chapter 1, the important events that happened was Jillian and her mom find a lost dog 3 weeks ago. I guess I should say found, shouldn't I? If they can't find the owner, Jillian's mom said they can keep him. All right, chapter 2. So I'm coming back to this page. So if you're still typing, don't trip, chocolate chip. I'm trying to give you guys enough time in between because I know some people are pretty quick typers or quick writers. And I know some of us, it takes another minute or two, and that's okay. So that's why when I pause up here, if you're done, that's awesome. But I want to make sure that everyone has enough time, okay? So I'm going to come back to this page. But now we need to look at chapter 2, Mystery's real name. So I'm going to look and see what we highlighted in chapter 2. She finds a poster with Mystery's picture on it, and it says his name's Barney. And she decides to walk around the neighborhood and tear down all of the posters that she can find because she doesn't want people to find him. So for chapter 2, we're going to type or write in your notebook, Jillian finds a poster for a lost dog that has Mystery's picture on it with his real name, Barney. He tears down a bunch of posters in the neighborhood. A bunch of the posters in the neighborhood. I'm going to change this color to blue just so that you can see the difference between these two. I know for me, at least, if I see a lot of one color, it's hard to find my place. So that's why sometimes I switch the colors here. So I'm going to write it in my notebook as well. You can see I wrote chapter 1 in our important events. And now below it, I'm going to skip a line and write C2 for chapter 2 to write these events.
Miss, in chapter 2, can you copy and put it on the text box?
Nope, because Lupita, I don't want you just copying and pasting it. You need to be typing it so that your brain remembers it better. Because if you use copy and paste, your brain's not learning anything. If you have to type the words, then it does.
Want to copy and swap it. Lost one.
So your paper, if you're writing on notebook, should look something like this. It'll have the work we did from that first page, and then your chapter 1 about the lost dog, and your chapter 2 important events about the lost dog. Same thing I typed on the screen, but I also wrote it in my notebook as well. So I'm going to leave this up for another 2 minutes. We're going to skip the written response today because I want to make sure we have enough time for math, and I will text your teachers and let them know.
Can we turn it in already after we're done with this?
Yes, when you finish this page, press that green check mark, please.
And